Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO, Jay Feitlinger, and no-nonsense COO, Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. All right, hello and welcome everybody to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hi, Jay.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
I am super good. I can't complain. Life is good. How are
Love
you?
it. I'm doing pretty good.
All the kids going back to school. It makes me like want to go school clothes shopping, kind of.
It's been a disaster, to be honest. But yeah, my oldest is heading to Madrid, and youngest is headed to Ohio State. So it's going to be interesting next few weeks here for us.
Similar but different.
Yes.
Well, no, I'm not going to say go Buck, Ohio. Ugh, sorry,
Oh, here
Ella.
we go.
Sorry. Go Huskies. All right. Well, enough about us, but sort of let's start with us. So this episode is inspired by a recent story, and it's your customer onboarding is killing your revenue growth. And why Jay and I chose this topic was I recently switched our payroll provider. And as you all know, there's just so many solutions out there, and it was kind of overwhelming at first. And I sought some support. I found a company that I appreciated. You know, they had a great migration plan. Obviously, we were time bound, so that created a little extra pressure and stress. And I was pretty excited. I felt good about their migration plan. They had a nice training module, integrated with all the important things in our company. And then through the onboarding process, I have become more and more upset about the experience. And now I'm frankly dreading working with them, and we haven't even technically started. And I thought about how many businesses have customers with these similar experiences that may or may not even know what's going on. Because often, I think Rob and I talked about it in a past podcast. The metrics and the KPIs on, or the stats really on losing an existing client and how many people they tell. It was like they tell 7 to 10 people about their bad experience. That's like exponential brand distraction. It's terrible and it's so hard to recover from. So, we wanted to talk about first and foremost the revenue problem that creates for B2B firms. And Jay, I don't know if, me sharing that story brought up any similar ones in your experience. I think we've had similar experiences with other tools. That one SaaS seems to be like an easy one to pick on, but gosh, is it painful.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, as you were talking, well, first of all, I'm super sad to hear about the new payroll firm because I knew where you were loved the sales process. So we were hoping that the onboarding would be as equally, great experience. But what's funny is, as you were just talking about that, it actually, and obviously you know this, what inspired us to focus on small to mid-market size businesses. This is one of the main reasons why. I'll never forget we had a massive enterprise size client that we worked with about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. They were, I think, doing about 4.5 or $4.8 billion a year in revenue. And I'll never forget the kickoff meeting with their chief marketing officer, where she let me know that they are having significant attrition issues with onboarding new customers. And so the reason why they hired us was they wanted us to help them get more leads to bring on more customers to help fill in the gaps of their attrition. And I basically pushed back on her. I said, well, I feel like we're solving the wrong problem. And I'm like, why aren't we focusing first on why you're having this insane attrition issue with after all the money and time you're spending on the marketing and sales side to close new clients? If they're leaving you after month 4 or 5 and you're forecasting them to stay on with you for 2+ years, the lifetime value of this is insane to me. Why can't we go ahead and focus on that? And her response to me, because our company was so big, is she's not really engaged or involved with the sales organization or the customer service side. And so it's not really an area that she could impact. And so she wanted us to stay focused on the marketing side. And I left that meeting feeling like garbage because it just kills me to see a business investing so much money on only the top of the funnel and not thinking about lifetime value. And so what I have found when I came back to the team and kind of talked about this story, everyone was like, well, we don't really have other clients that have this similar situation. And what I realized quickly is the companies that are not doing, $5 billion a year in revenue, those that are doing well below that are ones that I think would be sad about all the missed opportunities and want every department in their company to be running like a well-oiled machine. And so I think for me, that's one of the reasons why I love working with, small to mid-market size companies because they would never want to see, the problems falling in on that customer onboarding side. So yeah, so your story definitely resonated. It made me think about numerous examples, but I wanted to share that one because it helped give us our focus the last probably 5 or so years.
Yikes. I mean, what's sad is it's common, but I think it's part of what we've talked about in the funnel flow map is like identifying specific areas of issue. And this one, oddly enough, is I think it kind of feels like a little bit of a black hole. This is similar to the issue we talked about with like the handoff. This is one of those places where when things move from one unit to another, it's just ripe for drops and things falling through the cracks. And it's like the sale to the onboarding process is so tenuous. There's like excitement and momentum built up and expectations. It's it's almost like dating. It feels like, well, this is all really exciting in the beginning and we're figuring it out. And then expectation meets reality and it creates just a nightmare. And it's really like, what would you say? Is it like a training gap? Is it like, how does this happen? Because it
Well, I think there's,
feels simple to
I
solve,
think
right?
there's,
But we know it's not.
yeah. I mean, I think that honestly, the root of the problem, I think, could be numerous different variables in play. What I have found to be the most common is the leadership team is just focusing on the wrong metrics, and so they're not focusing on like that customer revenue impact. They're only focusing on the pipeline generation. And I just think that when you don't connect the dots to, that experience being solid from every touch point you have, that's where I think you're going to have some gaps. And, again, there's nothing worse than, convincing a company to take a chance on you. And then, the experience like you had with this payroll company being so mediocre, I think the damage that can be done to the brand is so scary because, that one bad review, or worse, they're talking bad about you behind your back and you have no clue what's going on. I think that that churn is obviously, very, very scary. And so again, that's why I love, and the value that our clients get with that flow map audit process is we aren't just looking at the marketing side, we're looking at the entire funnel. And so I think to your question, I've seen, numerous different, variables at play here of what's causing that. But more often than not, it's typically causing by lack of clear vision that's being communicated top down. And then looking at how they're measuring their, on their onboarding or customer service team on the kind of metrics you're focusing on. Because if the handoff, to your point before, between marketing and sales to customer services, if that's not consistent, I think people are gonna, feel that awkwardness, and it's just not fun. Again, I know a big problem in the marketing industry that we had many years ago is that a lot of clients were just so concerned that they would have like the A team, the best of the best selling them on the offering, and then once a client says yes, then all of a sudden they get handed off to, team B or team C level. And it's just so shocking for a company. And that's why I think for us, I'm really proud that we've done a great job at trying to make that experience at every touch point be consistent. But I do understand, obviously, the larger the company is, it's a little harder to do that because you have so many different people involved. So I just think that it's smart to your question that you analyze every aspect of your departments and how you're communicating your offerings and how you're supporting the onboarding process. And there's likely a gap somewhere either in that handoff process or within each department.
I like your point though about going back to measuring the right things, like measure what matters. And we've talked about like lifetime value or customer acquisition cost is really such an important metric because revenue does not equal profitability. They exist completely separate from each other in different worlds, driven by different things, as we've seen in our spaces. And looking at how your customer success velocity is measured versus sales velocity is a whole nother ball of wax, right?
Yeah, and I think to
So
your point, like we actually learned this from a couple different partners, like HubSpot, for example. I'll never forget when HubSpot shared a couple years with us, they actually had an intentional sales process to actually slow the sale down. Because what they were finding is, people that are really eager to sign up for, their CRM, the marketing and sales platforms, you get excited on features and product, benefits per se, but not really think about the benefit of the organization. And I think that if the sales team is rushing things too fast, to your point, the cost for the extra unnecessary time that the customer service team is having to spend to basically resell and reset expectations, I think is mind numbing. And we've seen that with a lot of companies out there where they aren't even measuring some of that, where the hours that go into helping someone off the ledge when they're so upset, I think is painful. And I think to your point, I'm loving that we're bringing up that payroll example that you're going through currently, because I think it's obviously adding a whole another level of empathy for us where, how much time is going to go into you and them having to address this frustration point you have. There has to be a better way to do this.
yeah, I mean, just the time I've spent on that back and forth is crazy. And then what happens is it degrades the very fragile trust that the sales team has worked so hard to gather, and to create. Um, and I think let's move into a solution. You and I have talked a lot about marketing and sales alignment, and it's something we're super passionate about because selfishly as marketers, your job is to support sales. And I don't know how you can see yourself as successful as you can be without knowledge from the sales team. But then following that up, as I talked with Rob about a couple weeks ago, it's all about the R's, and marketing is in everything.
Hmm.
whether you like it or not, going from marketing to sales to success, that's like adding the third leg to the tripod kind of analogy where it's creating this amazing flywheel of consistently built revenue versus churning it and having to start over and start over, and that burns people and teams, and frankly customers out. So like we talked in another podcast too, I think, about this particular piece, which is really poignant here, which is the right questions. So I think a couple of the solutions I would suggest we offer, one of them is the question that you're asking, kind of like the KPI, going back to your foundations that are these, like what I always ask myself when we rebuild our scorecard, what information am I hoping to gather from these numbers and what changes would I make from them? And I have found myself talking myself out of certain KPIs where I'm like, okay, I could get this, we'll call it a vanity metric probably, but what am I going to do with that information? Am I going to change anything about my process? Is it going to help me do that? Is it going to make a point for me? If not, then I really don't want to track it unless it's going to help me make a difference. And so we've talked about like our marketing messages setting customers up for success. That's a great question versus are we generating enough leads?
Hmm.
And whose responsibility is it to kind of figure out the right questions?
Wow, I love that. Okay, so I think here I would reverse engineer it personally, where I think, you start from the customer success side because, that client service or account management, whatever you call that department, they're the ones that are responsible for basically trying to keep that client as long as possible. So they're the ones that are really developing the ongoing relationship and building upon that level of trust that hopefully the sales team gained. And so what my advice would be is you look at both the good and the bad from their point of view, and then from there the sales teams are leveraging that to then improve their process. And then from the sales team side, based upon their experience working with the leads generated from marketing through inbound efforts, then I think the marketing team can learn from that. So I think that, again, I think there's that, working backwards mindset. I think it's important. But, to your point, it was a recent example that we had where we were working with a new client and we were talking about this exact discussion about, success metrics. And, obviously the big KPI they wanted to focus on was like conversion rates. And so I pushed back a little bit because I already recognized that this client had this issue around attrition. It wasn't horrible, but it was definitely not where it needed to be. They were losing too many customers. And so I asked a simple question, what about the idea of adding one new metric called like, I don't know, like a customer outcome achievement rate? And and the team was like, well, we don't know how to answer that because we don't ask that question. And I'm like, well, there's problem number one. Like, I think if your sales team is not taking the time to really understand the desired outcome from that client in 3, 6, 9, 12 months and ongoing, then that right there is concerning to me. And so I think there is that every time you bring a client on, even if they're all signing up for the same product or service, their desired outcome might not be at all what you're expecting. And a lot of times companies are just so caught off guard when a company leaves and they're like, well, I'm curious, was it based upon one of the features we offer? And it wasn't even tied to features. It was tied purely to they were expecting X and they got a monkey. They didn't even get, Y or Z. And so I think there is that. I think sales needs to do a much better job of thinking more like a consultant and putting themselves in the shoes of their client and really understanding what it's going to take to have that lifetime value be as high as possible. Because I think there from the customer success side, if I was onboarding a new customer and I understood all these items, I think I will be set up for much better success and be able to personalize how I'm talking with them, but also potentially address concerns because that customer may give you their, desired outcome and it might not be even realistic for what you offer. And so I think there, sales needs to then slow down and be like, wait a second here. I'm about to close a client off of the bells and whistles, but we can't even deliver what they're asking for. I think the right thing to do there is having that very open, kind of, radical candor of a conversation, because I think that's not going to do anything good for the company if if you're selling them on false promises.
It kind of reminds me of going to the doctor where you go for like one issue and then you have to go to another doctor. You have to start all over again and explain yourself. And by the time you've gotten to the fourth doctor, which is probably the one you need, I don't know how many touch points it takes to get a solution at the doctor's office, but that feels right. It's exhausting and it's putting the onus on the customer or the patient in this point, and it's just really not a good experience. And I think, in the middle of our podcast here, one of our takeaways is how can you smooth those bumps that are natural in a business? You've got departments for a reason, but does your customer need to feel the bumpiness at each touch point? How can you maybe smooth that out? Because slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? And I think keeping the customers that you have should be incredibly important. And I know it's hard to do because so much effort goes into the acquiring of the customers. I think those businesses that are really successful on the revenue side have found a way to do both of these very well, where they bring them on and then retain them appropriately. And it is a lot of work on both sides. Like there still is effort into managing the relationship because that's what it is. It's a relationship. Um,
Yeah, and I think to your
and
point, this is why I love the name of this podcast, Revenue Rewired, because again, I love that we kind of talk about the various aspects. It's so infrequent when we talk with clients of all types and sizes, how we get into the retention conversation. It's all about marketing and sales. And I think again there, for me, I think this is where a benefit of me owning a past company that was a SaaS, all we cared about was retention and measuring, our attrition rates and figuring out how we could solve that problem. And often the way you solve it is not really complicated or rocket science. It's just asking the right questions and listening and then leveraging that feedback. And it concerns me how many organizations are not thinking about all these various different aspects.
Mm-hmm. And I think, we've done a couple of quick like 30-day plans to help some clients get back on track with this because I guess that's the good news is once you're aware of the issue, I think it becomes a little easier to solve. And this also does help break down barriers between departments, which is something that we're super passionate about, is creating a better revenue generating business with better outcomes. And part of that is breaking down barriers between these departments and creating like a revenue operations department, RevOps. It's become more popular for a reason because less effort should be going into some of these, one-offs. It feels one-off and it shouldn't. So marketing should be feeling the sales team's pain and joy, and sales should be feeling that from the customer success team. And then all of that should be fed back into marketing, which is, do your marketing promises align with your customer outcomes? And connecting all of those dots is really like testament to an awesome leader. And it's not easy to do, but once you get started, I think momentum is better than nothing in this arena, you know.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, again, end of the day, typically for our focus is working with the marketing departments. And obviously the return on investment, that ROI conversation often comes up, typically at least during quarterly or annual planning that we help them with. And I think that what's really kind of neat is when you can attribute the customers that are achieving the promised results and those that are referring other companies they come across that would benefit from the partner that they're moving forward with. There is this really interesting KPI around the marketing ROI that you can tie to all of that, because that's where I think it's super exciting. Is that to your point? About 10 or so minutes ago on lifetime value, if you can connect the dots between the investment you make in marketing to the lifetime value of your customers, and then really focusing on fine tuning that kind of fish where the fish are at. The scaling opportunity, thinking about like a 10x business model for revenue generation and growth. I think back to your comment earlier about revenue and profit. This is where I think the profit and the magic happens. It's so much cheaper from a business growth perspective to maintain retaining your best customers than having to invest so much unnecessary time on trying to keep the wrong customers, because marketing or sales, probably more likely on the sales side, sold, a bill of goods that didn't meet their desired outcome. And so I think that this whole, measuring the revenue impact on the business growth, I think it just gets so much more exciting when you think about it from that point of view versus standalone departments.
And the other piece that's, I guess, the yin to the yang of an unhappy customer telling basically their entire close personal network and then some about the experience is when they had a great experience telling all your friends and family about that awesome experience, and it doesn't take much, I think, for a great experience to happen. And for some reason, maybe it's the marketer in me and doing this for like a decade plus. I think about those opportunities. Now I've become you. Great. Like now I can't like
Sorry.
have a normal human experience without putting a marketing spin on it. Like, if like an example is when you have to call a place and then you have to call another place, but they have just as easy access to the phone number as you do, and you don't need special information. It's like, "Hey, let me make that call for you." And holy cow, like just 5 minutes of that extra effort creates an amazing experience. And so, of course, that falls in customer success, but that feeds into I'm meeting the expectations of this customer, and they are now referring business. And so you can't stop at the whole lifetime value because I don't know, Jay, like lifetime value now becomes exponential when you've got referrals based off of that.
Oh, it's huge. And again, you think about it, the impact to your point before on how one person that, is well connected like you, and obviously people trust you, you know, if I was like the chief revenue officer of this massive payroll company, and I'm assuming that they would care if they heard this, obviously you're not going to name the company to be rude. Well, I assume you're not going to. But, that is really scary because you likely are going to really turn off people that might consider them. But, the funnier story that I think about all the time that I love when you shared with me was when you went into that, I don't know if it was a laundry mat or whatever it was, and you had them fix your button.
I was going to
Um,
share that story again.
oh, were you?
Yes, I
Because I
was. I was
think,
thinking about it.
it's so funny to me how like one person, regardless of the company's size, the impact they can make. I probably have told that story to 20 or 30 people. And I've been asked numerous times where that place is at. So I need to get that information from you. But my point is, it's like it's so powerful how when you turn a customer into kind of like an ambassador of your brand, the voice and the power they could bring to help you scale from the referral side I think is just so exciting. And so I always talk with our clients about that is like, could you imagine some random person at an event is asked by, five other people at their round table who they're working with, and they talked about you like you're their, best friend. The credibility you bring to that brand is so powerful. So maybe I should quickly share, I think for fun, that story, and then we can kind of work our way towards wrapping up, this show.
Yeah, I had a jacket and the button was like half off, and I love this jacket and I did not know where the spare buttons were. And so I went into this alterations place around the corner, and I'm in a new neighborhood. I've never been there. I liked my old lady before, but she was like always booked and too far away. So I had to find a new alterations place. I walked in and I said, "Hey, I no pressure. I just would love to get my button reattached securely." And the guy was like, "Oh, I'll just do it right now." And boop, 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 fixed my button. And what's funny enough is late last week, I went and picked up a pair of pants that I spent more on altering these pants that I've never been able to wear and I love because I trusted him and he was so friendly and we talked about his vacation. Mind you, I've had maybe 10 minutes total of interaction with this business, but they have me. I will probably go out of my way to go there if I move because of the experience that I've had there where he basically it did the whole give to get, but it wasn't icky feeling. It was just from the goodness of his heart and that he enjoyed his work and his business, and it was just contagious. And so now I'm a customer.
For life.
It's Judy's Alterations, by the way, in Scottsdale. So
Oh,
for
you're
all
so
of Jay's
sweet.
friends, great story because I think about that all the time. Like just that little tiny piece of effort, a few threads or a few strings, if you will, really changed the outcome because I mean, I didn't have a reason really to go back until I kind of made one up. I was like, well, here's some pants and I know a great tailor, so here we go. It
Love
was fun.
that. Yeah, I think there that should really be the desired outcome that everyone really has is like you want to be able to hear a lot of these kind of stories when you're talking to your customers, and that's going to help define success.
Hmm. Yeah, so in conclusion, we're wrapping this one up and we hope that fixing the disconnect, if there is one between marketing promises and customer outcomes, it gives you some space to start working within the business, and maybe improving lifetime value, like finding better metrics to track, talking to your customers that are super happy and successful, and continuing to feed the marketing sales success loop is really like a wheel on the revenue Ferrari.
I love that.
All right. Well, anything else to add there, Jay?
Well, I think I just wanted to wrap up on like one item that I kind of already talked to, but for me, and we had previous, shows about the whole like garbage in versus garbage out. The thing that I have found, and we have, a good handful plus of clients that are following these kind of models and doing a really good job on the customer onboarding side and measuring all the right areas to really improve that lifetime value. Those are the clients when we are tracking the data correctly in their CRM, if they have Salesforce or HubSpot, it's just so exciting to me because we can ask probably the most important question on the marketing side, where it's basically, do our customers or clients come from our marketing achieve better business outcomes than those from other channels? Because the big thing that a lot of our clients ask of us during, quarterly or annual planning especially is, are there other tactics or channels that we should be considering to help us, generate an additional, $10 million of revenue next year, wherever the growth goals might be. And when we're able to log into the CRM that's been properly used between marketing and sales and customer success, then we're able to kind of reverse engineer where we're seeing the best opportunities, and not just the tactics of the channels, but also then the messaging and the campaigns. And so I just feel like, if everyone is incentivized around that, one KPI on generating revenue, and they're able to really confidently, with honesty and, and truth around all of that and trust, being able to answer that question, and then measuring the lifetime value of those customers, I just feel like it's just so exciting on being able to attract, the right kind of customers who actually can succeed with the offering that the sales team is providing. So that's really kind of what I wanted to wrap up with on ending on that note is that if a business is struggling with trying to answer that question, that's where I think we can help. And again, we would very likely want to start with that, full, flow map auditing on the customer journey side, because we'll be able to figure out where they might have some gaps between marketing and sales to customer service.
Yep. Data and tools. Got it. All right. Well, we hope you all enjoyed this episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. It's always our pleasure. Thank you, Jay. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks,
Thank
Sarah. Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.